Welcome to the woods. It's been raining pretty much all day and yesterday, but it's just stopped, so I thought I'd come out and have a chat. Now I was going to read some notes, but I'm just gonna talk through this. Just going to ramble on. So bear with me, because I want to talk about 3 videos that I watched recently, 3 different content creators, and hopefully I can link their channels in the description box below. First one was from Endeavour. Second one was Computing Forever, Dave Cullen's channel. And the third one I'm going to discuss is Morgoths. So Endeavour's last video was really interesting. And in it he spoke about how in a relatively short period of time things have actually got much worse. And I'm not talking about the last 2 years. He was talking about how for a very long time we've been very, very comfortable in the West. And even in his own lifetime, the difference is marked. When he was living at home with his parents when he was a child, his mum and dad weren't considered rich, just normal folk. And they had a nice house in the suburbs, they had 2 cars, they had regular holidays, the children all had gifts at birthdays and Christmas, they could eat out at restaurants, and they could buy nice things. And that was considered normal. And it struck me because my life was much the same. As I was growing up, I didn't live in an affluent family, but we did go on holiday, and I always received gifts at my birthdays and at Christmas, and so did my brother and my sister. We went on foreign holidays. I remember the first one I took, it was quite something. I went on school trips, and we weren't considered rich. These were things were considered normal. And if I look at young people starting out in their lives today, a lot of that, and the biggest one, was home ownership. Of course my mum and dad owned their own home. Everybody did. And I did. When I left home, I rented for a year and then I bought my own property. Young people today haven't got that. They really don't, for most. They can't envisage a future where they'll own a home, that regular foreign holidays are just out of reach, that eating out in a restaurant more than maybe once a month is a luxury. And I talked about how me and my brothers and sisters, so I was part of a family, and I had kids, and I look around today and young people aren't having families. They'll convince themselves they can't afford to have a family. So Endeavour's video was really quite poignant and struck a chord. And he was saying that how difficult it must have been as a dissident a mere 20 years ago, trying to point out to someone that the system's gone wrong when it offered so much comfort and luxury. That even if those people did realise it was going wrong, it wasn't going that wrong for them. And he's right. People were bought with comfort and luxury and convenience. And it's difficult to explain to someone that everything's gone bad when their life is so comfortable. And the second video, Dave Cullen on his Computing Forever channel talked about the end of abundance, something we're hearing a lot of now. So really where Endeavour finished, which was talking about today and how harsh it is compared to 20 years ago, Dave moved on from today, pointing out that it's about to get a lot worse. That the restrictions being put in place, fuel prices, energy prices, the fact that you won't be able to buy a home, and these things seem to be manufactured, that old system, the one we're in now, is slowly being taken away whilst we're in it. And I touched on this 2 years ago and said that you're not going to get an almighty collapse, but as the new system comes in place alongside the current one, it will slowly replace it, and you'll hardly see it coming. You won't know the changes until you're in them, and we're seeing that. If you're looking for it, you can see what's happening. You can see the shift away from people owning vehicles. It's now becoming too expensive to own a vehicle. Do you buy an electric car? There's no infrastructure. And even if there was, it's now costing as much in electric as it would cost you in petrol or diesel. So people stop owning vehicles. And this is, of course, what they want. So your foreign holidays are going to be priced out of reach. Houses are already out of reach. They'll come up with the solution for you, which of course will be a much smaller accommodation, where your work will be within 5 minutes, so you can walk there. You'll be paid in a digital currency, and with that digital currency you'll be able to purchase exactly what they tell you you're allowed to purchase. And people will take that, because what else? What else? Buy what we tell you, buy the food we tell you you can have, or starve if there's no alternative. And that alternative was pointed out excellently in the last video I want to talk about, which was Morgoths. And there were so many good parts of that video. Such a nice change to see our man from the north on a positive note. Because as much as he pointed out a lot of dark issues, there was light at the end of that tunnel. He pointed out that how incredibly stupid it was to say that pubs have to close because they can't afford the energy bills, which is simply buying into the current system. And it's stupid because pubs were open 300 years ago, and before that we've always had them. Before electricity we had a pub where people would go and meet and socialise and drink a beer, maybe with just a log fire. Actually sounds quite nice, doesn't it? But people have bought into the current system in such a way that they can't see a way through it. They can't see a way without it, until maybe it's pointed out to them. And in his video he talked a little bit about geopolitics, and he discussed China, and what they seem to be doing at the moment is looking forward. They can see that the whole system's changing, and their concentration is now on food security for their people. Self-sufficiency. And that's important. And that seems to be diametrically opposed to what we're doing here in the West, where they are offering farmers incentives to stop farming. Where in Europe they're grabbing farms from farmers, where they're trying to put them out of business with 101 different excuses. There's too much nitrogen, you can't use fertiliser. Even if you could, you can't buy the fertiliser because we've shut down the fertiliser plants 2 years ago. So whereas China's looking to be self-sufficient, it looks, and I can definitely talk about the country I live in Britain, it seems as if they don't want us growing anything. And Morgoth discussed how in the Second World War, when there was obviously going to be shortages of food because we couldn't import any, then all the land was turned over to food usage. Football fields were growing potatoes, cabbages grown on roundabouts. And I've touched on before, in the 1980s, this country produced over 80% of the food it consumed. And bit by bit, that's been chipped away at, that's been eradicated. It's now below 50. In fact, it's getting down to 40. And we're importing 60% of our food when we don't need to. My disagreement with Morgoth in his video is he says that there would be hardships, that we would have to give up some things. We won't be able to import oranges from Seville, or maybe pineapples or bananas. Whereas 20, 30 years ago it may have been true that they would be difficult to grow over here, that's not the case anymore. You see, unlike a lot of people, I don't mind technology when it's used for the benefit of the people. And with current technological methods, it's quite simple for us to grow bananas over here, if that was a goal. We can grow pineapples and mangoes and passion fruit and whatever else you care to mention. You could still have your crushed avocado on toast if you're a hipster wanker, because we are capable of doing it all anyway. What the WEF and all of our politicians that have bought into this agenda are trying to say is that theirs will be the only solution to the hardships they're going to impose on you. And it's true to a certain extent that a lot of the public will buy that when they personally are suffering, when they are cold in winter, when they can't afford to put fuel in the car, when it affects them personally, they'll be looking for someone to offer them a solution. Now what these people, what these parasites are saying is theirs is the only solution. And they're wrong. They're wrong. This country has sustained itself forever. Before we imported oranges from Seville, before we had electricity, we were able to house our people and feed our people. And we can do it now. And we need to point that out. That the pub doesn't need to be closed, that the pub could be open, that we opened them before and we can open them now. That we don't need to shut down farms. In fact, what we need to do is increase the amount of food we've got, maybe to 100%. And I can hear a lot of you in the comments saying we could never do that. Man, do you know how ingenious we are? Really? If anything, our ingenuity has been our downfall, but we can't stop getting better at things. We can't stop solving the problems. The problem we have is that most of our solutions are co-opted by a corrupt elite and then used against us. This is why I have nothing against technology per se. This phone I'm using to make this video is an incredible invention, something that I never thought I would see. To me, this is like science fiction. I remember watching Dick Tracy when I was a kid with his little watch on, that you could actually see the person you were talking to. This phone I'm talking to you on and making this video, it is better than the communicators they had on Star Trek. They had no video screens. I've got a mobile TV studio folded up and put in my pocket. It's incredible. And it works for my benefit. The only problem with it is it's a dual-edged sword, because it can be co-opted by a corrupt elite and then used against me. And we know this. They can turn the camera on and see what's going on. They can listen in to conversations. They can track my whereabouts. So it's not the technology that's the problem. It's the people who control it. And the control of these things needs to be ours. Yours and mine. We need to be in control of it. And we need to be able to use these things to make our lives easier. To push forward. To do more. To be greater. To be self-sufficient. And not need anybody else. And there's problems with this country that are going to hinder that. I touched on houses and people not being able to afford one now, and we know that the housing market, right, the prices are sky high, right, and that's not down to technology, that's down to too many damn people in this country because of the insane levels of immigration, which makes no sense. Why are you importing a workforce on one hand, or you're telling us it's a workforce, and then on the other hand telling us that the fourth revolution is going to wipe out up to 70% of employment? So what are these people here for? Sure, from their point of view, it's probably better from where they've come from, but from our point of view, it makes no damn sense at all. So there's things that need to be sorted out, and that's fair enough. But they can all be sorted out. The fantastic thing about Morgoth's video was it showed quite simply the answer, which is the answer to the problems is we just do what we've always done and look after ourselves. We've done it before, we can do it now, and we can carry on into the future. So I'm going to end, if I can find it in my little book, because I did make some notes, I'm going to end on Morgoth's, what I think's probably going to end up being one of his most famous quotes. And it was from that bald-headed weasel Yahari, or whatever his name is, from the WEF. Let me find it, because it's such a good quote. And Morgoth said that these people, they're confused. As technology gets better and automation replaces employment, they're not sure what they're going to do with all of these useless humans. To quote, "It is not our purpose to serve their system. We were not born to live lives in service to them. The arrogance of it is astounding. I'd turn it around and say, no, you've got it the wrong way round. We don't have a use for fucking you." He's dead right. We have no use for them. We can do it ourselves. I'll speak to you later, people.